So a couple of days ago, it was revealed that we're getting 2 Star Wars movies in 2026, and one of them is very likely to be Dave Filoni's film produced by Jon Favreau. Now, I don't think fans realise just how important this film is for the future of the franchise, for the future of Star Wars storytelling. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it's probably one of the most important things Star Wars is doing going forward. I'm not talking about retrospective content in the sense of The Force Awakens, the promise 2015 brought for this new era of sequels. I'm not talking about that. I'm specifically talking about moving forward, and what they hope to do with this film, what it could breed in terms of storytelling. It's a big screen cinematic Star Wars movie with Dave Filoni's name attached, something we've not seen since 2008, and it's going to build upon one of the most popular streaming shows in the world, not to mention Ahsoka, which comes out in August, and we don't know how well that's going to do, but I presume it's going to draw in a lot of fans as well, and that's going to be the prelude to the movie. And despite the success of these shows on Disney+, movies tend to get more eyeballs on them than the shows. There's a wider outreach, so there is pressure, and that to me is so exciting because with the Ahsoka show coming up in 2 months, they're building up a massive war that is not dissimilar to what Zahn did with the New Republic, the Imperial Remnants, Thrawn, and some other surprises too. Bear in mind Dave Filoni also said the book of Boba Fett, which too is in the Mandoverse, is accumulated with those shows that are going to be paid off in this film. Of all the creatives at Lucasfilm, with the exception of Tony Gilroy, who is fantastic, I love Andor, Dave Filoni is the one who I think can get it right, and with a bit of luck, if this movie is able to bring the Star Wars magic, the je ne sais quoi, the fandom, maybe to some extent, might heal. Some say it's too late, but don't underestimate just how important this film is going to be. And a big part of why the fandom is really hyped, probably way more so than the Rey film, is because it's nothing to do with the sequel trilogy. In some ways it might build up to it very slowly and allude to it, but we're still very far away. And the New Republic time period has been a fan favourite since the 90s, because the expanded universe explored so much of it. And aside from Ahsoka and Din Djarin, this is a peak time for the likes of Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Leia. We have Force users, Rebels, Grand Admiral Thrawn, a revived Empire, Dark Jedi, and if the rumours are true, Night Sisters. And if this is indeed for the big screen, probably a stunning visual battle too. Mando has become a pop culture sensation. Not only has it introduced a new iteration of Star Wars to fans, but it's also introduced Star Wars in a new way to a whole new generation. Both its charm and appeal mean that when a movie from this era comes out, fans will be dying to see this. And throw Grogu in the marketing, I'm sure they will. I'm sure his adorable face is going to be on the poster, and you're gold. Now, when it comes to upcoming Star Wars content, I always try to stay positive. I always want to give everything a chance when it drops. So for me, I'm very excited about where this story is going to lead. But for many Star Wars fans, they're kind of more apathetic than ever before about upcoming content. There are lots of Star Wars fans that say the franchise is dead, those that are walking away, those that aren't happy with the state of things right now. And that's why for those fans, I'm really hopeful about the Ahsoka show and Dave Filoni's Star Wars movie. I feel as though those two things, if done right, have the potential to draw those fans back in. And I think Dave Filoni knows that. And as I say, if you look at all the source material from books, there is so much potential for this era. They can go in so many different directions. There are very few canon stories at this time on screen, so really they have a lot of freedom, and that is excellent. Because all the basic components are there, we have an attachment to these characters, and now it's about building upon them. Star Wars fans are gonna want to see it, and while they've not announced this, I'd bet good money on this becoming a trilogy of films that leads up to The Force Awakens, 2 decades down the timeline. And incidentally, I rewatched it the other day, and there are so many political allusions in that film that make so much more sense after watching The Mandalorian Season 3. And this is really important to what the Ahsoka show and Dave's film do. Let's talk about it. Mon Mothma is a very interesting rebel in Star Wars. We've seen a lot of her story explored in Rogue One, Andor, Return of the Jedi, and several books, but the period that we're going to see her in the Ahsoka show is probably the most interesting in her life. The New Republic government, the government she set up and was largely in charge of. We know a lot about the decisions she made after the Battle of Endor thanks to books and Battlefront 2, but the Ahsoka show is really going to be our first on-screen depiction of the headquarters of the New Republic at this stage, especially concerning some of the challenges Mon Mothma faced with Admiral Akbar, Maydeen, and other senators. And I want to talk about this because I recently did a rewatch of The Force Awakens, and by that point, much further down the timeline, it's very clear the New Republic had no chance against the First Order. And by then, the resistance and offshoot movement had already been started, which the New Republic was funding. So how did things get that bad? And secondly, where is Mon Mothma in episode 7? Well, the answer to the latter is that she became very ill and retired about a decade prior. So one of the first things she did was to propose a massive military disarmament act once the Galactic Civil War came to an end, and in her mind, this was going to cut the size of the New Republic defense fleet by 90%, something she thought would be a good thing. The other 10% would go towards training and supporting other militias. And then we get into some territory that we saw in The Mandalorian Season 3, the New Republic's inability to keep up with the demands of people across the galaxy, those who needed help, whether it was Navarro or in a separate case, Kashyyyk, and this actually caused tensions between Leia and Mon, because General Leia wanted to free Kashyyyk. She's a good friend of Chewie, and that was a priority world. But when it came time for Leia to plead to Mon Mothma that they should do something, as predicted, Mon said they didn't have any of the manpower or resources. She praised Leia for her idealism, but this started the long tensions between the two characters. All the while, Remnant's leaders across the galaxy were taking note that the New Republic was struggling to cope. Ray Sloan, for example, is credited as one of the founders of the First Order, and along with Gallius Rax, were very crucial at this time. And it was about this time that Ray Sloan offered Mon Mothma a peace deal, insisting they were going to comply with the government. Because Mon Mothma frightened Mas Amedda, who was terrified of being convicted, Mothma assumed that Sloan would be just as easy, but that wasn't the case. As a gesture of trust, Sloan offered to have Imperial Republic peace talks that took place on Chandrila with minimal guard. Mon accepted and agreed to remain in contact with her using a special channel. In secret though, the Remnant was planning an attack on Chandrila instead, using the liberated locked prisoners to assassinate the New Republic leadership. So the day came when Ray Sloan and Mon Mothma were going to have this peace talk on Chandrila, and when it happened, Mon gave a speech, but a prisoner called Brenton Lorwexthy tried to assassinate her. Mon survived the attack due to his wife Nora restraining him. This attack ended any prospect for resolving a galactic civil war through diplomacy. In response, Fleet Admiral Rax ordered the Imperial fleets to assemble at Jakku. So fast forward to the time of the Ahsoka show, Mas Amedda signed both the Imperial Instruments of Surrender and the Galactic Concordance. So what were these? They were basically terms of surrender from the Empire. The Empire and various splinter factions like the Remnant were ordered to cease fighting. Mon Mothma also issued a declaration designating all surviving Imperial military officers as war criminals. The treaty forced the Imperial Remnant to remain inside predetermined territories in the core worlds and the Outer Rim, but Mon Mothma urged everyone to remain vigilant in the event a conflict returned. But here is where everything goes south, and why the Ahsoka series is so interesting for the New Republic. The Imperial Remnant disappeared to the unknown regions, and we do see many of the leaders of the Shadow Council in Mando Season 3. They duped the New Republic and Mon Mothma into thinking they were individuals with no ultimate plan. Unknown to Mon, Grand Admiral Thrawn had returned, and he was going to lead the Shadow Council, so in the Ahsoka show we can expect Mon to be absolutely clueless, or have one specific idea of what's going on, when in reality no one actually knew. So in the scene from the Ahsoka trailer around 9 ABY, Mon Mothma and members of the New Republic are meeting with General Hera Syndulla, where they proclaim the Republic has to prepare for the worst. Something is coming. Breadcrumbs that lead back to Thrawn have started to appear, and this is why Ahsoka and other Force wielders are so important for defense. But remember guys, Grand Admiral Thrawn has an army of Night Sisters. Does the New Republic have a chance? I think maybe because by the time of The Force Awakens we don't know where Thrawn is, and despite the rise of the First Order the Republic is still there, even if Mon Mothma is ill. So what is so fascinating to me about what we're going to see in Ahsoka is that Mon Mothma is in the last decade and a half of being Chancellor before she steps down. So this is when things really become unstable for the Republic. Her drive for ensuring peace and demilitarization left the New Republic in a weakened state, at a time when the Imperial Remnant was fortifying itself with things like Praetorian Guards, Mandalorian-esque stormtroopers with Beskar, increased military with TIE bombers, TIE fighters, and in a way, the fracturing begins this early in the timeline. But I also think the New Republic is going to be different on screen compared to the books. They're probably going to expand our understanding of it, and maybe even simplify things, because when you really start to dive into the politics of all of this, it can become very complicated. But share your thoughts on this and everything we spoke about in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, my dear friends, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, but until the next one, my dear friends, may the Force be with you always.